everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is 6:30 in the morning Central Time on the 4th of November. So at this point, we are in a we don't know, but Nate and I slept last night. I got a good about 7 hours of sleep. So
well done, you. I got about 5 because I didn't go to bed till about 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning UK time. Or at least I didn't fall asleep. But I woke up. Obviously, I'm on a different schedule since I'm a professional podcaster. I woke up around 10, and I was just sort of like kind of levitating. But yeah, I stayed up and watched it, and it's weird. You know, you were going to say something, so I'm going to let you jump in first. But I've got a thought on it when you once we go ahead.
Well, you know, it's as leftists. And as people who have been yelling about things like this for the last 4 years, it is disheartening but not surprising to see in the middle of a pandemic that the Democrats, they can't pull a win. You know, they can't pull a decisive win. And I think a lot of people are very upset right now because that's what they wanted. They wanted fascism to topple underneath the blue wave. And as it turns out, you know, fascism is actually very popular. You know, I understand, you know, like you think fascism, you think Nazis, the Nazis were bad, but like if you look up the definition of fascism and you're just like, it's that thing where everybody who doesn't look like me or everybody who isn't a part of my tribe is violently expelled, then yeah, I'm all about that. It's understandable why that is a attractive thing for people who have been fed nonsense about globalists for, you know, the last 4, 8, 12, 20 fucking years of their lives. So it's very like there's a lot of cope happening on the timeline right now. This is the election of the Great White Cope, and it doesn't matter which side you're on. You're in the middle of cope. The only smart thing you could do is smoke a gigantic blunt and become the Joker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I was basically levitating, unable to sleep, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm smoking a huge amount of weed," and that didn't even really help that much. That's the funny thing. Like, I genuinely found myself just thinking, okay, I might just wind up getting really high and then being forced to stay up all night because I can't seem to stop, you know, buzzing completely. Because I don't know, when the results came in from Miami-Dade, I was just like. Oh my God, y'all have managed to fuck up the unfuck-upable.
As it turns out, Nate, telling Cubans and Venezuelans that the other people are socialist, you know, that's a winning combination. It seems.
Yeah.
I think that's how the Republicans are always going to play Florida. Is just be like, that guy is a socialist, and it's like that's Trump Jr. It's like, nope, he's a socialist. He's running against Donald Trump. So.
Well, yeah.
Like that's always just going to be the answer is nope, those guys are socialists.
I think that one of the things, too, is that there is a liberal tendency in America, I think, when people get super into watching the polls and watching the elections, that they think, well, if we can just win Florida, then we can go to bed early. And everyone always wants that because Obama won Florida. I mean, Obama won in a landslide in 2008, but Obama won Florida in 2012 also. And so they're convinced that Florida is trending blue, but it's kind of not. And obviously, with voter disenfranchisement being a huge thing, all of the voting rights restrictions they have there, just the general swamp fuckery of Florida as a state, you have a situation where you've got to expand that coalition somewhere. You've got to make inroads elsewhere. And I mean, okay, Virginia going as quickly as it did, as far as I understand it, like I remember when Virginia was absolutely a swing state. And quite frankly, Ohio and Florida don't really seem like they're being swing states anymore. Like the demographics are just not trending in the right direction for Democrats if that's the game you want to play. If the Democrats aren't going to fucking build coalitions and actually help working people. And so,
no, man, they're gonna get all the disgusted Republicans and all the Lincoln Project conservatives, and that's how they're gonna win. Somehow.
Which is hilarious to me because from what I can tell, and it's so early right now that I'm just putting this out as a possible interpretation. And not a definitive statement about, you know, the whole thing. But it does look like there have been significant instances of the Democrats having courted Republican voters who voted for Biden for president, and then voted straight Republican down ticket.
Yep. Which absolutely, because Democrats have no vision beyond, like the Democratic Party has no vision beyond the presidency. Like, and this is not to say that there weren't good results yesterday. Cori Bush won her spot. Jill Shupp, I'm sorry, I'm talking local stuff. Cory Bush, who ran against incumbent Democrat Lacey Clay in the primary. Cory is a registered nurse, has been homeless, and Lacey Clay tried to use a lot of that against her, which did not work out so whatsoever. And Cory was on the front lines of Ferguson, during 2014. So Cory's been around. She's that person that, when people are like, man, everything here is fucked up, you should run for something so you can change things. Cory Bush did that, which is, fantastic. Out in the county, I don't think Jill Schrupp unseated Ann Wagner, but the only thing I know about Jill Schrupp was a commercial I saw at the dentist when she came on, and she was just like, I have to clear some things up that my opponent has been lying about. I am not for Medicare for all, and I'm not for defunding the police. And I was like, well, fuck, what's the point?
What's the point of voting for you then? If I wanted a Republican, I could fucking vote for one.
Right, and it's the same thing with everybody who's doing this, gripping the desk about Biden winning because they want Biden to win. It's just I don't know what's your long-term game plan here, because we see what's happening right here. Nate, do you think the Democrats, if they win the presidency right now,
as of right this moment, it looks like it's trending in the direction of Biden winning? We don't know. By the time this episode comes out, it's possible that that'll have changed, or it's possible to have been confirmed. But as it stands right now at 6:40 a.m. Central, 12:40 p.m. London time, it looks like the Democrats will not retake the Senate, and they have retained control of the House, and Biden is probably going to be president. So,
and all I can think of is, if it took this much to elect Hillary Clinton number 2, what exactly do we see 2024 looking like?
Or 2022 for that matter. Because if Mitch McConnell can just tell you to eat shit and never let you vote on anything, then by 2022, man, we're looking at a fucking nightmare scenario when you think about the post-COVID stuff in the economy in America. I mean, there is stuff they can do with executive orders. There are a lot of things they can do with executive orders. Don't get me wrong. But fuck, man. I mean... Yeah,
Mitch McConnell beating Mitch McConnell light was very, very unsurprising.
Oh, that was hilarious, yeah.
There's just so many... $90 million, Nate. $90 million went into that. Do you know, what... Here's what you should do instead of giving $90 million to fucking Amy McGrath. Patreon.com/hell of a way to die. We will waste your money in a much funnier way, I'm sure. I will... If you sign up for the Patreon instead of giving money to Amy McGrath next time this nonsense comes around, because it's Senate, so it's going to be 6 fucking years of more Mitch McConnell. Your only hope is that he dies and we have to scrape his fucking body out of the chair and chuck it into a dumpster somewhere. But that ain't going to happen either, because fucking Yertle the Turtle, even though he's been injecting crocodile directly into his hands for the last fucking 20 years and is slowly deteriorating from the inside, he's just going to be a skin bag until somebody accidentally pricks him and he pops like a wet balloon. That's your only real hope that you have here is now it's up to the I don't know, can we find some witches to cast some magic that he falls down a flight of stairs and breaks his neck?
I was gonna say, hilariously, McConnell might be the one elected Republican who actually believes COVID is real and that he should defend himself against it. So our normal avenue of approach for giving Republicans an out from politics is not going to work with him. It really sucks when your enemy is smart. He's a piece of shit, but he's not dumb. And that's the thing. So many politicians are just such dim bulbs that the Democrat... I mean, it's just... My God, the idea that you're going to have a battle of the wits between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer.
Did you see that one dipshit kid one too? The
Nazi in North Carolina, Madison Cawthorn.
Cawthorn, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, one of my things that I want to say, and I wanted to debut this on the show, is that you got to realize Mitch McConnell looks like a haunted turtle or like a ghost emerged from a turtle shell. Has an incredibly deep voice and also an incredibly anti-charismatic personality. I don't think you realize how much of a repellent piece of shit he is. He's gotten to where he is based on his cunning and wits and his ability to be a piece of shit and just absolutely spike the ball forever. But the thing that kills me about it is, like, if you ever hear him talk, he genuinely sounds like a more Southern genteel version of that video from the early Obama years of the angry redneck who thought that Obama wanted to ban flavored dip. Like, I'm dead serious. Listen to Mitch McConnell talk, and he genuinely sounds like, I found out this fucking Obama wants to ban flavored dip. Like, he genuinely sounds like that. So in a way, it's like you have an enemy who's so incredibly repulsive, but who's also smart. Like, McConnell is smart. Schumer is technically my senator. He's an idiot. Chuck Schumer is such a waste of space. Chuck Schumer is as bad as Dianne Feinstein, as bad as Nancy Pelosi. Like, just not quite as geriatric, but just so not up to snuff. Like, what my old boss, who is kind of more on the independent/Republican side, old boss from the Army, one time said that, you know, on election night after Hillary lost, every time he saw Tim Kaine on TV, the look on his face was just sort of like, whoa, there might be some free snacks for me tonight. Like, just completely fucking out of his depth. And that, to me, is sort of where Schumer is at. And so they were really, really, I mean, like, okay, obviously it's good that if Trump is not president, like, don't get me wrong, it's good if Trump is not president. Like, in terms of harm reduction, it is still a better thing, but you're looking at unbelievable austerity because the Republicans just don't care. It's just going to be burn it down, salt the earth. I mean, we're at the point where it's no longer own the libs, it's kill the libs. And the Democrats should have, for two things, they should have been able to do better. And God damn it, now we know that had they still done this thing where they pulled all the levers for Biden and there had not been a pandemic, or the pandemic response had been better or competent, or there had been more stimulus and relief, Trump would have mopped the floor with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely
would not
mopped
have even been
the fucking floor. Like, we would have been in bed early last night because it would have been Mondale shit. It would have been McGovern shit. Like, it would have been awful. So, you know what? I trust that. I mean, also, like, I'm just laughing that I've heard South Florida Democrats are awful, but the idea that they just, in this year, they fucked it that bad. Like, that they did worse than Clinton. Like,
oh
my God, I just, what can you do, man? All you're allowed to do is give the Democrats money. They don't want your opinion. They don't want your help. You have no say. When they send you those, like, surveys, if you were, like, registered as a Democrat, they're just fake surveys that tell you to give them money. Like, I'm telling you, they don't care.
Like, what are the important things to you? And then you flip it over and it's just like, cool. Hey, while you're sending this back, put a check in there, you piece of shit. And this is the meme of the SpongeBob, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, Democratic Party? Of, like, because you just think, Nate, Trump did better with every demographic except for white men. Every demographic. White women, black men, Latino, Hispanic, men and women, across the board. White men, he went down. And, like, you know, there's enough of us that maybe that balances it out. But Nate, that's fucked up. Like, it's so disheartening to watch this election and watch these people and to know Trump supporters. And I know Trump supporters. And I know it's very easy to do this, you know, like, I would cut all the Trump supporters out of my life. But, like, you know, before all of this, and, you know, meet some people that aren't the flag humping, like, you know, the Mexicans gonna steal our job. You know, talk to, like, any of the other, like, normal, quiet people, and you'll see that they have just as many, like, fucked up fears. And you know what? Maybe they're fed their own stack of lies, but fucking guess what? So are the rest of us. And, like, what it all comes down, like, Nate, it surprises me when, like, a majority of people, Democrat and Republicans, say we need Medicare or we need something, because it's impossible to go to a hospital. And to have a guy like Joe Biden come out and plant his feet and say no. And to have Kamala Harris, who once was just like, yeah, I'm all for Medicare for all, and then plant her feet and say, well, Joe Biden says no, so I say no. And to say no to, you know, legalizing marijuana across the board, and to say no, just to, like, say no to so many things that people are like, we need these things. Like, these are things that, like, normal countries do. Like just the Medicare for all thing. Like if they could just meet me with one thing, and they don't. It's like, and I'm not a single issue voter, man. Like I'm not somebody who's going to say, unless you're going to, but it was a zero issue. There was zero issues that, and again, what did it come down to other than Orange Man bad? Like that was the plan in 2016. And like now that we see Orange Man is bad, but a lot of other people see Orange Man is good. And so we get 220 million people going out to vote, but it's not the landslide victory you want, because a lot of people are also saying, I think Orange Man is good. And therein lies our problem. And like I said, I've pretty much, I don't care at this point with 2020, because 2024 is so much more frightening to me. And as you said, 2022. And like, this is what we do now, man. There's a point in time I didn't know shit about this, Nate, and I was happy. I was stupid and happy. And God damn it, I want to go back to those days.
This is my that in a way, us just wanting to go back to being stupid and happy and just grilling for God's sake is basically if Hillary had won, we'd be at brunch right now. But I mean, look, we've all been blackpilled, we've all been joker pilled, we've all been forced to reckon with the things that are happening all around us. And I guess for me, the thing that's problematic is I recognize that there are ways in which Biden being the president removes some of the problems that we have had. It does put you in a better position. But if you're in a situation where I guess here's the thing, right? You are looking at a situation in which you are potentially going to be seeing depression levels of unemployment. You're potentially going to be seeing complete health breakdown. America is the absolute worst case scenario for COVID in the world right now. You're having 1,100 people die per day. You're having over 100,000 new cases reported, and that's just people who are being tested. This is going to tear through America over the course of the winter. People are dying. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their homes. This is a tinderbox. And the Democrats could not offer anything. They did not learn any lessons from 2016 besides they played to A, electability as they perceive it, and B, he's not Trump. And like you said, the Fox News poll basically showing 3-1 margins in favor of things the Democrats said they won't do, like legal weed, government health care, path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, like all that stuff. Democrats could run on that and they'd win. And that's the thing, is that they'd win. But instead they are convinced that the West Wing is real. And the thing about it is like some people got fucked up pretty bad, but not enough of them. I just don't necessarily know if a reckoning will ever come, because I mean, quite frankly, to me at least, the Democrats in 2016, having put all their faith in like a bar graph and, or a fucking progression chart, and completely ignored campaigning, ignored all of the rumblings, ignored all of the incredible negatives, surrounded, the campaign with a circle of sycophants. And also, if you remember from the earlier parts of the primary, effectively elevating Trump because they thought Trump would be the easiest to beat. After that having happened, like, you would think that would be a moment for a reckoning and learning lessons. And they have not learned shit. They have not learned dog shit. And I feel like what we have seen, in the last 12 hours is proof of that. And look, man, I mean, right now, as it stands, it's looking pretty good for Biden in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And if he wins all those states, then he's won. But something could turn out bad. We don't know. It's entirely possible that like there's some weird shit with vote counting in Nevada, like stuff we don't know. We genuinely don't know. But I think, to me, one of the biggest failures on the part of the party, on the part of the Democrats this campaign, has been that, okay, I got it. Look, Bernie didn't win the primary. They went out of their way to rat fuck him, but also one of the things they did was also take advantage of an obvious blind spot, which was that his path to victory hinged on the centrist vote being split. They didn't really have a plan B. That's my perception. However, okay, so let me before I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm just saying they didn't want Bernie to win. They were going to pull every lever. But let me finish. Here's the thing. They should have looked at Bernie's results and seen the absolute blowouts he was winning with Hispanic voters in Nevada, in Arizona, at least polling in Arizona, and have said, we need to cop this. And what did they do? They got Anna Navarro, the daughter of a Contra, trying to court South Florida white Cubans, and they lost them like dog shit. And they also lost a significant amount of Hispanic votes in the Rio Grande Valley, one of the most democratic areas of America. Like, they fucked up the Rio Grande Valley. So, like, yes, they did way better in the suburbs. And I think another big story that really, I swear to God, I wish people will take this lesson away from it. Look at the judge, Lena Hidalgo, in Texas, in Houston, in Harris County. She won a close race to be the county judge in 2018. She was like 29 or 27 when she won. She's a Colombian American immigrant, and she took her job and said, I'm going to, do everything I possibly can to expand access to voting in Harris County. And they did tons of early voting, tons of outreach, 24-hour voting sites, drive-up voting, all this stuff. She expanded their voting budget, the voting facilities budget, from $4 million to $31 million. Like, they did not win Texas, but it's just, obviously there were some huge campaign issues across the board with their Hispanic outreach. And I don't know if Texas is there yet, quite frankly. But look at that. Look at like actually taking charge of a situation and being like, we're going to make it in the place in our purview. We are going to fight to make it easier to vote. Like, there are lessons to be learned. There are positives that came out of this. But when I look at that, when I look at Arizona, they cinched it. I mean, it genuinely looks like they cinched it, And I saw Ruben Gallegos talking about that. Like, look, we've been campaigning for the Democrats since the bullshit, the cops can stop you and ask you for your papers bill in 2010. And it took 10 years, but they've really started to build a big coalition of Hispanic voters in Arizona. And it's that on the ground work. But Biden as a candidate, like, I genuinely feel like white Democrats need to and Democratic elites and people in the media should understand this. You cannot just say, well, the trend lines are pretty good, so I'm pretty sure that that these minority groups are guaranteed to vote for us no matter what. And certainly Trump being a racist idiot isn't enough. It's just not enough. Like, it's more complicated than that. And Trump did a ton of outreach to Latinos, did a ton of Spanish language stuff. He way better than last time. Like, and the Democrats just slept on it because they thought I'm going to come out and say it. They thought they were owed those votes. And it's like, listen, man, that's just, you don't understand voters. Like, we are the anomalies. We are the outliers, being on Twitter, being online, reading politics shit, like being this engaged. Most people aren't. And the Democrats, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with this. Like, they have made inroads in the suburbs, but it looks like a lot of those people voted down ticket Republican. Like, I just don't understand it, man. I just don't understand it. And the thing about it is that I think that the big takeaway I was going to say in the beginning is this is not 2016, but this is nowhere near as good as it needed to be. And, like, in a way, I feel as though this is a situation that we need them to start learning from their mistakes. And they are all like they're all so old. They're basically not even boomers. They're so fucking old that it's like, I just don't think that they're going to learn. And, like, Republicans are awful, but the thing about Republicans is they adapt. And, and Democrats don't wield power. So I'm not optimistic. I mean, in a way, I'm cautious because here's the thing, right? Like, there's going to be a Senate runoff. The Dems could win one more. I don't think there's any way for them to get even a bare majority in the Senate. But there's an extent to which, like, if Mitch McConnell has his way and Biden is president, then he will do nothing. He will burn the country to the ground and he will blame it all on the Dems and it'll work. So unless the Dems start getting way better at communication and start pinning this shit on the Republicans, like, I just don't know.
It's gonna, because Biden is, if he wins, he's being handed a huge pile of shit. And I don't think Democrats have the ability to dig out of this huge pile of shit, nor would anybody. Like, this isn't the Democrat, like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We will be hitting depression levels because, like, everything runs out at the end of the year. All the protections, all of the rent holds and the eviction holds and all these things, all of those things it's not going away. And even if Trump loses, he's not going away either. Like, and he will always have his sycophants, and he will always have the people. And he now commands a nationwide cult of personality. And this is like, my fear is not, the whole election results. My fear wasn't yesterday. My fear is like, I just want to know what flavor of fucked we are. Like in the coming years, in the coming decade, in the coming 20 years. Because I got to say, Nate, if anybody out here is, puts their hand on a wall and leans against it and does the whoo breath after Biden wins, I want to slap them, because this is when work is going to get really hard, because you got to maintain that. And I don't think you're going to. And I don't think Democrats have anybody. Now, and to be fair, Trump is an anomaly on his own. Like, maybe getting him out will settle some things down. Maybe, if you can get him out and then like fucking get him off of, like, ban him from Twitter, then I think that things will even out a little bit. But that's a lot of hope. That's a lot of hope that, and in the end, like, 2024, when they're running Cotton versus Crenshaw, at least Cotton, is a wet blanket of a personality. Like, he's a blank slate. Nate, I don't know. Did you ever watch Parks and Rec?
I've seen a little of it, just here and there.
I know people like to think it's like this generation's West Wing or whatever, but I think it's funny. There's one episode where Bray, Wyatt, and whatever, the people, he basically goes and works for a senator, and like every time the senator is not like actively engaged in like vote stuff, he just like sits in his office and stares blankly at a wall. Like, they make him out to be just a complete robot. Like, he does nothing but say the exact same thing that politicians are supposed to say, and then as soon as he's done, it's just like a robot. He goes and he sits down and he powers up for a little bit by just staring at a wall and smiling to himself. And like, that is very much, the politics of it's just this thing. You put it up there, and then it spits out all of this nonsense. And I don't know. I mean, if Trump loses, he's going to run in 2024. Everybody understands that, right? Like, if he's not dead, he's running again. We're going to have one of those situations. And also, again, even if he doesn't, man, Crenshaw would probably win. I think Crenshaw could take a presidency. He's got enough personality. Yeah,
the thing about I was joking with Cynthia last night as we both woke up in the middle of the night, or she woke up and I was still awake, and we talked, and I said, I've long held to my, ear to the street Arkansas sources that Tom Cotton is in the closet and he's gay. And I was laughing. I was like, imagine if 2024 is Pete Buttigieg versus Tom Cotton, and we have a face off between two gay troops. Like,
the America we find. Hey, you know what? That's progress. Then
I was going to say, this is like the day after Bush won re-election. Somebody wished on a monkey's paw, and that would be them getting it 24 or 20 years later.
Somebody saying, I wish that we could have a gay troop as president, and Tom Cotton is just like, your wish is granted.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're all going to fucking eat birthday cake now. Everyone goes to Ranger School. Like, God, if you ever shut the fuck up. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was looking at this, that I do think that Biden's campaign disregarding Hispanic voters and saying they don't need them, saying they don't need the progressive vote, not offering anything. I mean, I do think that Biden... I watched a video from The Intercept. I'll link to it in the show notes. It was a great footage of people doing Get Out the Vote and lots of other campaigns happening in Philly. And it was, lots and lots of black neighborhoods, campaigners, formerly incarcerated people doing campaigning, explaining people their rights. People doing Get Out the Vote, doing Working Families Party stuff, politicians who've run as independents and won because the Democratic Party is so corrupt and just sort of venal in blue states. Folks just talking about their discontent. One woman saying, at this point in my life, the Democrats are my enemy because they're the local politicians and they're always, stymieing us. And, one story in particular, there was one of these men who was campaigner for formerly incarcerated people. And, he's out talking to folks. And one guy was like, and it's great. I mean, it's really telling. He said, this man's talking about, I made a mistake, on the crime bill. It's like, folks got put up for 45 years. They don't get their lives back. He's like, I would never vote for that man. And the campaigner says, you'd be surprised how many men we get like that. you know? And like
Yeah.
Trump improved with black men. Like I another thing, Cynthia and I were talking, and she's like, yeah, y'all don't go get criticize anyone, even if white men did improve. Like white people voted for Trump, like 100%.
Yep.
More on a two. Like when I saw in the United Kingdom, when I saw the last Survation poll, and it showed that 1 in 2 men in Britain was going to vote for the Tories, and that their number one issue was Brexit. I was like, we are so fucked. And like this is worse. Like men in Britain being pro Brexit and thus voting Tory is a smaller margin of men in Britain than white people in America voting for Trump. Like, hands down, America's more diverse than Britain, and our system is stupid as fuck and completely archaic and just some of the dumbest shit. Like, absolutely undemocratic.
When you say our system, do you mean the
United States. I mean, here's the thing. Britain's is bad too. Britain's is just as bad, believe it or not. You don't have the electoral college, but I mean, you have a similar phenomenon in that because of the way constituencies work here, it's sort of like, it's like house races. It's like all or nothing. So I live in a constituency that votes Labour. And, you know, even though the vote share was down last year, my member of parliament, her margin of victory, her like vote surplus or whatever was like 20,000, 30,000 votes. You know, and our studio, current studio in Whitechapel, has a Labour MP also, and his margin was like 40,000 votes. But Labour won, I want to say something like 31% of the vote, which was way, way down from the previous election. But the Tories won 43% of the vote. And they wound up having a majority of 80 seats. Because even though they didn't get the full majority of the vote, even though it was split between Labour, the Lib Dems, the Green Party, Plaid Cymru, the SNP, etc., you know, the SNP got 8% of the vote, but has 50-something seats because they represent all these constituencies in Scotland. Does that make sense? Like, basically, if you had proportional representation is not necessarily good for like far left politics, and that's you get into a debate about the efficacy of electoralism because you know it winds up giving you more Angela Merkel than it does Jeremy Corbyn. But in the United Kingdom, you had a party win less than half the vote. The anti-Brexit, anti-Tory vote, if you added it up, was more than the majority of the vote, and the Tories, when we say 80 seat majority, what we basically mean is like they have exceeded the halfway point, the 325 point by more than 40 seats. So basically, it's a weird way of phrasing it, but basically, like when they say 80 seat majority, what they basically mean is in order for something for the Tories to not be able to pass any legislation they want, 80 people have to vote differently. Does that make sense?
It does. And
it's complicated, but the point I'm trying to make here is it's kind of like an electoral college of its own. Like if you had proportional representation, if it was just you voted for the party wherever you are and they tally up the numbers of seats in parliament based on the number of votes in the country, then Labour would have had about the same, Tories would have had way, way fewer, and all of the minority parties would have had seats. But whereas right now, like the Green Party in Britain gets 6-7% of the vote in the last election and they have one seat. In 2015, I think, the Brexit Party, or UKIP, got 15% of the vote and got no seats. Like, that sucks. Like, they suck. They're a far-right party. They can go eat shit. But the UK also has a system where you have to sort of game the numbers. Not as bad as the Electoral College, but it's certainly no fucking voting paradise, let's be perfectly honest. And, and so it's bad.
You know what America doesn't have, though, that England does have?
What's that?
You guys got the smack bar and pee wet.
We do have smack bar and pee wet.
We don't have that here in America. Nate, I don't want to spend this whole time talking about the election. We're about 30 minutes in, and I'm sure everybody has probably already had this shit drilled into their head forever. So this episode usually comes out on Thursday. Thursday, November 5th. Officially my last day as an active member of the United States military. Very
congratulations.
Very
Congratulations.
I say it that way because technically I'm just being transferred to the retired reserve, which means that my report base is Fort Knox, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to show up though. That's how mine was when I was on inactive ready reserve.
Yeah, they assign you because they need to be able to keep track of you, but like nobody's gonna call me up. So like because I'm retired now, I didn't just get out. I'm still in the system for for ID cards and for TRICARE and for other things that you get just for being a retired reservist. So I got a lot of things to figure out. My hair is growing long. I have absolutely no idea what to do with long hair. Like it's been 20 fucking years since I've had hair that didn't have to get buzzed down at least on a monthly basis. So
funny story. I didn't get a haircut for like 4 months when I got out of the army. I got out in Korea. I went back to Indiana. I went to New York, and then I started traveling. And I think I did eventually get a haircut in Korea, so in like August. But I'd gotten out of the army in April. And I remember I was in Turkey visiting some friends would have been June. And I was walking down the street in this neighborhood in Istanbul that was kind of close to the water. And the wind started blowing, and it blew my hair. And my hair for the first time since I was 18, my hair was long enough for the wind to catch it and pull it back. And I was like, I haven't felt this feeling in so fucking long. Mm-hmm. I haven't actually felt the wind move my hair since I was basically a high schooler. At that point I was almost 30. It's such a weird feeling.
Yeah, it's having the long hair, especially during the winter. I want to I want to keep my head warm in some way, shape, or form. And my daughter, of course, like, no, you need to. She wants me to shave constantly, and she wants me to have short hair. Like she is my new drill instructor. Just constantly giving me shit. Now my drill sergeants normally didn't kiss me on the cheek goodnight and then complain about my scratchy face. So it's a little bit different, but it is the same result, in which I have a 5-year-old pointing at the bathroom, being like, "Go shave."
Yeah, man.
So it's good. It's good to be out. For those of you who are like, "Oh, when's Francis going to do a stoned podcast?" Fucking listen to any of our bonus shit for the last like 4 months, bitch.
Yeah, man. Well, here's the thing, right? We haven't yet done a full weed cast, so I feel like we're gonna have to schedule one. Hilariously, it's probably more likely that weed will be legal in Missouri than ever having it be legal in the United Kingdom.
It is. It's legal here for medical. So can you get in Oregon? Did you see Oregon? Like all drugs are legal now.
Don't say that. That's a reductive way of phrasing it.
All drugs are legal.
I don't want people to get in trouble in Oregon. No, they've decriminalized possession of small amounts of, I believe, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. Which is not to say that they're legal, but rather that like you aren't going to get if you're a low level user. They're basically doing the Portugal approach.
Right. If you get busted with a little bag of heroin, they'll take the heroin and they'll tell you to fuck off.
Or they'll give you a ticket or like a summons or something, but it's not the same as getting arrested. And it's like,
right.
Everyone in 2000, Portugal did this nationally. And everyone lost their fucking minds about like, oh my God, the degraded and venal Portuguese. And now Portugal has the lowest drug use and drug addiction rates in the world, or in the developed world, I believe, or at least in Western Europe.
They took the money that they were using to put people in jail and they put it towards, helping people who need help with drugs.
And hilariously, they do clean heroin, they do needle exchange. And the hilarious thing is, not only has the population of people addicted to heroin stayed stable, but it's aged significantly demographically because there's not anywhere near as many of new instances of people getting addicted to heroin.
There's no new heroin users?
There are some, but like it's just not as many. And hilariously, like they're actually probably stricter on weed than many European countries in terms of like the actual laws. I mean, if you're a minor, you'll get put at least sort of like a talking to from a social worker if you're smoking weed, get caught smoking weed as a minor, but you won't get a criminal record. And hilariously, they actually have, I think, some of the lowest weed usage rates in Europe, whereas France, which has an extremely, like if they want to throw the book at you for weed in France, they absolutely can. France has an extremely high weed usage rate. So it's like, don't get me wrong, I like weed, but it's so obvious that the answer in the, that you could start tomorrow with legalize weed, decriminalize small amounts of drugs like, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, And like I actually I don't want to take a hard position on stuff because I feel like, much like Obama, my opinions are evolving. But I just, most people who get put in the system get put in for some bullshit because the cops want to fucking make their quotas, and they get them on fake field tests for drugs, and then these people plead out because they can't afford to not take the charge because they can't be in jail for years awaiting trial. They have no representation. They can't afford a lawyer. Like, if you take away the mechanism for cops to fuck with people on drugs, like, it helps a little. Obviously, like, it's no solution in and of itself. Like, until cops are no longer rewarded for the number of people they arrest, like, you're never gonna fix this or even make a huge dent in it. But this will at least reduce the number of people who get put into the system and whose lives are made inexorably worse because of bullshit drug charges in Oregon. And that to me is a sign of hope. A lot of the weed bills passed. The thing with contractors in California sucks awfully. I cannot believe it passed. It's so bad. It basically it makes drivers contractors, and like it denies employee rights, and they've managed to basically do like a circuit break to the California Constitution in this bill that now I think it requires a 67 or like a 70% majority of vote to overturn it. So they've basically like made it unremovable. So it's like
they let Uber lock in, like, basically change the fundamentals of how labor works in their own state. I'm reading, and I'm starting to read a couple more historical books because they make me feel better about the way things are today. I've been reading a book called The Butchering Art, and it's about the surgery during the Victorian era and like just how insanely terrible it was to, like, the person who cleaned the fleas out of the mattresses was paid more than a surgeon was in 1840s London. And so, like, I hold out hope sometimes. I read stuff like this and like, okay, obviously in 200 years we have gotten better, not just like surgically, but like describing everything around it. It's not better, it's not great, but it's like, okay, I can see when you pull out and you do kind of a macrocosm kind of thing, you're just like, okay, so 200 years, I can see that there's some kind of progress. It's hard to, when you're looking at it every day, when you're living through it, it's hard to see that progress and that progression. It's just, my hope is just, that this sparks something.
Yeah, I mean, because it doesn't just get better with time. Like, stuff has to happen. But I do see that, like, I mean, Florida, for example, Biden losing Florida, but then Florida passing a thing to increase minimum wage to $15 an hour. Granted, it's phased in, and also the way that Florida, remember, Floridians also passed the thing to re-enfranchise people in 2018, and the Republicans fucked it in the courts, and now it doesn't exist. It's 100% a poll tax.
Dude. Missouri is the same way. Missouri, like, the things we vote for, and we didn't do great this time around, but we vote in general for very progressive things. We vote for sunshine laws.
Fucking hate Democrats.
They just hate Democrats. They fucking hate Democrats. And this is the thing that, like, being a Missourian and seeing what gets put onto our ballots and seeing, very confusing language. We had something passed that was really shitty because they're like, that's a thing to ban lobbyist money from going to lobbyists. You hate lobbyists, right? And then you go down 3 more and it's just like, also Republicans get to redistrict whenever they want, and nobody gets to say anything different about it. So anyway, lobbyists, right? And of course that passed.
Yeah.
Because they, a normal place, a place that gives a fuck about what the people actually think, would break those apart and let you vote on each one of them separately. So fucking, of course, everything has to be rat fucked by the conservatives. Everything has to. If conservatives want to stay in power, it has to be rat fucked. The problem is that Democrats, 1, allow it, and 2, do their own massive amount of rat fucking too. They allow the Prop 22 in California. They allow Dianne Feinstein to continue to be a senator. She's 87, man. And, like, no hate on the elderly, but should she be, I mean, get fresh blood in there is what I'm saying. You don't even need to have somebody young. Get somebody who's 60 in there. For fuck's sake. Get somebody in there who's new and different and churn things up. Because like I look at things, I look at Missouri. I look at our 11 electoral things, and I look at how Parsons won handily. Of course, our conservative governor beat because that's how it is. Like we're a red state, and there's times it's just like I don't understand why Democrats can't look at this and say, here's what we need to do to win Missouri. And maybe you're not going to win it in 2024. Maybe you're not going to win it in 2028. But you need to have long distance goals here, guys. And I feel like there isn't. And like me, a progressive in St. Louis City, a progressive in Missouri itself, we get left out in the cold for this because we're in Missouri. There is no changing us. And it's like we on our basic levels have to grind and change and yell and scream and fight. But nationally, you're not going to have anything trickle down to you. Like nationally, Democrats have pretty much kind of given us up. And hopefully with Cori Bush, maybe we're going to start to see a little bit. But Cori Bush, it's a Democrat replacing a Democrat, She was running against a Proud Boy libertarian, like who stood no chance whatsoever. So, and it's great. She is somebody who is better than Lacey Clay, but I don't know, man. Like, I just don't, in the next, I just feel like the next like decade is going to be really touch and go. And there's a lot of things that may change. And I don't know how it's going to happen. We are living through the exciting paragraph in Wikipedia right now. And I don't like it, Nate. I don't like it. But that's just the hand we've been dealt. So.
Me neither. But I will say what's hilarious to me is that there was a story that I saw last night that there's been some indications that I think the Democrats in New York won regardless, but that Cuomo was helping to funnel Republican money into races to hope that the Democrats lost so that he wouldn't have to pass any legislation that Democrats want because he's that much of a piece of shit. He's the reason why they whiffed so hard on marijuana legalization in New York. Meanwhile, New Jersey just did a ballot initiative and it passed. So now Jersey's going to have legal weed, and New York is still like there's like 3 doctors in New York State who can prescribe you medicinal marijuana for like 2 very rare conditions, and it's only in like concentrate form. Like you can't get bud or vape oil or anything. Like it's the stupidest thing. Everything Cuomo does is like giving away 3/4 of the loaf and then punching left that anyone demands anything better. Like it's unbelievably cynical and stupid. So it's hilarious to me to see Jersey like just pull it off. And like I made a joke with my old boss who I argue with a lot about politics, but he seems to have come around about he hates establishment Democrats as much as I do. I might hate them more, but he's more like Bernie candidates, and libertarian socialism is fine with him, which is weird. But he's a Texan / guy from Pennsylvania, so it doesn't surprise me. And I told him in 2015, I'm like, I think I can make this bet that in 2025, weed and gay marriage will be legal nationally in America. And if you'll take this bet with me, the winner of this bet gets a free steak dinner from the loser of this bet. So I've still got my fingers crossed. Who knows? Maybe they'll reverse Obergefell and try to get rid of gay marriage. But I don't know. I really don't know. What I do know is there's got to be a reckoning, and I don't think they're going to learn. But there are signs of hope, and that's the point I would make: is that like this isn't 2016. It's not a blowout. It's embarrassing given the circumstances. But incumbents tend to win, and presidential incumbents really tend to win. So it's a faltering step in a correctish direction. Now, will the next steps continue to be in those directions? Yeah, but it could be very, very bad depending on the Senate and depending on how McConnell does shit. Like it's just really so. There's a lot of cause for concern. There's a lot of really embarrassing missteps, and I think the big takeaway I have is that had the Republicans done a better stimulus, a second stimulus. Had they continued unemployment benefits, had they just been slightly better on the pandemic, they would have fucking destroyed Biden,
dominated. Yeah,
oh my
like I said, if
God, they would have nuked him. Like it would have been, yeah.
if there was not a if there's not a pandemic going on, you'd be fucked, because your choices are a guy who is against Medicare for all, against legalized weed, against doing anything about police brutality, against doing anything about racial inequality, and your other choice is also those things. So what, like, if at least with Trump, like he doesn't have a 40-year political career albatross around his neck. Trump has 4 years, and even that is just like, well, I mean, comparatively, he's not as bad as, this guy or that guy, I guess. And like, I know, like, look, this is not, before everybody starts yelling at me, Trump's bad. Biden would be a better candidate in the next 4 years. But I'm thinking about the next 20 to 50 years. And I don't know, like, I just don't know what's the best way. We're a faltering step, kind of going towards in a correct direction, and that direction can wildly veer in any other direction at any other point of time. So don't sleep, be angry, still demand all the changes that you deserve, and scream until you die. Like, literally, just not like scream until you run out of breath and die, but like scream until you're an old person and still screaming for a better world. Because, like, look, man, I got a 5-year-old. Do you not think that I want everything to be comfortable and better for her? Like, it's mind numbing. But honestly, having a kid, like, I know a lot of people do this, like, I'm not going to bring a kid up in this world. Like, having a kid makes me less apathetic. It makes me more, it makes me want to push more. And, my wife and I were discussing, last night, it's like, if, I'm mentally prepared for a Trump win. I always have been, because that is just the world I fucking live in. Like, 2016 made me be like, nope, you just need to be prepared for it, because there's a good chance that it can happen. And, the question doesn't become like, how is our lives going to be affected? Because in truth, we're not, at least not like directly. And it comes down to what do we need to be prepared to do? What do we need to be prepared? What do we need to be willing to do? And, my fear is that if Biden wins, a lot of the spirit of the rest of the country, like all the people are going to go back to brunch, is what I'm concerned about. And it's going to open up, because I read this thing about, this big long article about, how we got to the point we are right now, and it's Republicans playing a ground game and taking the Senate and taking the House in 2010, and then redrawing all the district maps. Like, that's what people also didn't understand. This election, because it's the census year, decides who draws the district maps again. And I mean, I'm glad that the Republicans didn't completely, take everything, but also everything's just not as good as it could be. And I know we all wanted that sweeping. We're Americans, man. We wanted the good guy to win. We wanted us to win. We wanted us to go in and swoop down and take everything and flush everybody out. And I know that it's really easy to say, oh, well, Bernie would have won. But I mean, I think that Sanders would still be in the exact same boat here, where we're counting a lot of ballots. And you just got to understand, man, politics is not, it's never going to be a we did it kind of thing. It's a we did it, what's next? We did it. What are we working on again? Or we didn't do it. How do we need to improve? That's politics for you. And that's politics here on this basic day-to-day, everyday level. And now that I'm going to be out of the military, I feel like I can start getting involved in things a lot more. There's a lot of local stuff here that I want to get more involved in. I'm involved with my neighborhood, but not in any kind of organized way. Just like, I know people, I talk to them, I'm friendly with them, which in 2020 is a big thing. People are more insular; they're not as talkative with their neighbors. So, it's time to start to stop thinking about tomorrow and think about 2030 and think about 2040. And what do you want? What do you want by then? Because, it's not going to be today. You're not going to get Medicare for all today or tomorrow or the next day. Maybe not for another 5 years, maybe not for another 10 years. But you got to be ready to fight for it and to continue to fight for it and to continue to put people like Biden on blast. And I know all the shit-headed Twitter leftists will do it because that's what we fucking live for. but also we gotta, you gotta talk to your shithead lib friends on Facebook and just be like, hey, there's this, action going on, or hey, we're supporting this thing. Try to get your centrist lib friends involved in your local politics as well, whatever way that you can. Because that's really where a lot of change really comes. That's where shit that is actually going to affect your life. Like, I know everybody has different circumstances. For me, the shit that affects my life directly is my representative, my alder people, my fucking shithead of an ass mayor. Like, I'm more concerned about my fucking mayor than I am the president right now, because my mayor will rat fuck some stuff, and she's a Democrat. So, trust me, I know. I guess this big rambling thing is just to come down to I know that the people who listen to this podcast aren't going to suddenly relax and be like, we did it, let's go back to brunch. But people who are. And I'm not saying that you need to go yell at them. I'm not saying post, hammers and sickles at them. What I am saying, though, is that I know a lot of our listeners are at least knowledgeable about local politics and knowledgeable about what is going on in their local areas. And it's good. Like, you have a lot of people who are very politically motivated right now, and you can harness that power. You can harness that and just say, hey, what if now that that's done, Biden won, hooray, high five. Hey, we've got some like local state senators and local representatives here who have some really cool stuff going on. And this guy's a real shithead. He's a Trump supporter. Like, you hate that, right? So let's fucking get rid of him. Let's go do that. Let's, where your $5 really matters is, for the person running for a rep seat or a House seat or a state seat, something that is local. So, I don't know. Like, maybe this episode is also our own cope of some way or another. And I'm certainly, we're not shaming, we're not yelling, we're not angry at anybody. But also, don't sleep on the world that you live in, because it's always going to be changing. And you gotta, now that you're politically conscious, you can't go back. You can't go back to being stupid anymore. And you gotta. It's up to you now to keep moving forward. So I think that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, man. Well,
so bonus is kind of a continuation of an episode that Nate and I did. I talked to Peter Lucier, a local St. Louis and former Marine, current law student. And we discussed the Angry Veteran, where the Angry Veteran has gone, where the Angry Veteran is, and just like just the changing landscape of being a post 9/11 veteran in America. Now that it's 20 years past and the wars are still going, but very wound down. There's really not that many people over there. So Peter and I, who both of us were once upon a time young angry veterans, kind of struggle session that went out.
When you talked about this collective void that we were screaming into together was really powerful and cathartic. There was a piece I really wanted to write, and I did a lot of research on it, and I'm really sad I let it go. But you talked about kind of post-surge, and that fits with the piece I wanted to write was about these spaces. It was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the kind of the history of mill blogging and what had came after. And what I found, and so I talked with a lot of these guys who had started really early, like in 2004 and 2005. There was some of the first voices coming out who were sharing their experiences online, who were telling war stories, but were doing it in this way that was really unique to, at the time, Iraq. That was all that anybody was talking about. And we were in Afghanistan in 2004, but all the stories were coming back from there. And there were these places like Black 5 or This Ain't Hell or the Mudville Gazette. There were these blogs, and this was pre-Twitter and pre-Facebook. So internet traffic, if you can remember, but now 80% of internet traffic goes through Facebook or Twitter. It's all social media driven. And but then people would look at these websites every day. You would type in black5.com and you would see what they had posted. And it really did pick up around the surge. So I talked to Andrew Exum, who used to write Abu Mokwama, which is Aaron Simpson started to write there as well. And we were talking before we started recording about Bombshell. There were all these people who kind of coalesced around the surge, and there were all these mill bloggers. And before George W. Bush announced the surge in 2007, he hosted a military blogging summit It was October 2007, and
I remember that. Yeah,
and some of them zoomed in from Iraq. And what was happening is that on the left and the right, and you talked about this, and it's true. There were left leaning blogs and there were right leaning blogs. Black 5, started by a guy Jim Hansen, who then worked for Breitbart and now runs his own. But both, folks who would end up on the right and folks on the left, and you think the more left leaning, some of these folks like Abu M, Matt Gallagher, who's written a couple books from now, had a blog called Kaboom Blog in 2007, were all advocating for the surge. Because there were the coinistas, the pushers of coin on one side, and then there were kind of the typical kind of hawks on the right. And everybody said we needed to do Iraq differently. And they kind of won these military voices and were used as part of the media effort to promote the surge, all these bloggers. And then something really interesting happened in 2008. Barack Obama won an election, and two things happened. On the right, Iraq kind of calmed down in the media. And so a lot of the right-wing bloggers stopped talking about Iraq because it looked for a while from 2008 to 2011. It really looked like Iraq, we were winning. The surge had done what it had meant to do. Violence dramatically decreased. There was a decrease in car bombings. The Anbar awakening happened. And so the right-wing bloggers stopped talking about Iraq and started talking about Barack Obama. A lot of those right-wing bloggers ended up working for Breitbart or working for National Interest or working for National Review. You can trace the military lineage of some of these folks back to mill blogging. They got jobs criticizing Barack Obama. And then on the left, the Coindinistas went to work for the government. So like Aaron Simpson worked on General Petraeus' team in Iraq and Afghanistan. Andrew Exum ends up later in the Obama administration years working at the Department of State. So then there was this gap in military coverage and military war stories, and what emerged post-surge was these new voices who were starting to come out of Afghanistan in the later years of Iraq. And you think Max Uriarty, or Uriah, I don't know how to say his name, Terminal Lance. Terminal Lance came on the scene, and Task and Purpose came on the scene in 2014. The Duffel blog came out, and then a lot of these Facebook groups too. And everybody was complaining about the war and talking about the war. And they were doing it through Facebook and Twitter now instead of through these old mill blogs. It was a little more raw even. There was a lot more culture to it. There was this infantry culture that had been kind of well established at that point, and the memes and a lot of the kind of toxic masculinity that came along with it. And then of course Twitter, and then you had the early days of Twitter. And there's this whole history of kind of phases of the war and war story and war storytelling. And what's interesting is there was always a next generation coming. So those early mill blogs got replaced. And then, when Terminal Lance had been out for a couple of years, other voices started talking. And then when they stopped, anonymous Lieutenant Twitter kind of took off. There was places. And now with some of these things starting to shut down, it feels like there might not be a next generation, at least talking about the war. There's I think the next one, I think there's junior enlisted folks on TikTok, and they're doing their thing, but it's different because they're not telling war stories. They're telling military stories, and they're telling military culture stories. But it's different. The rage that I think a lot of us felt, and that we collectively screamed into the void together and had that catharsis from post-surge until now, is kind of going away. And the TikToks are a lot more fun and lighthearted, and there's a lot less.
It's nice to see soldiers that haven't been beat to shit yet. Like it's when I see those TikToks, even when you see a staff sergeant, maybe they're a slick sleeve, or maybe they've got like one deployment under their belt, but they've been in for like 10 years or so, and they look fresher, they look younger, they look, I don't know. It felt like, for me going through my first deployment and coming out the other side of it, and then doing a lot of, I went to Honduras, I went to Germany, and then I went to Iraq. And I mean, I got back from Iraq when I was 26, I was, meant, as you were saying, you come home with a chip on your shoulder, and it's nice to see, it's just nice to see soldiers that seem to be happy. or that are complaining about the things that they should complain about. They're complaining that the food sucks. They're complaining that the air conditioner is broken, or that they got to wake up and do PT, or they're out of booze or whatever. You know, the things that like an E4 is supposed to bitch about, not like, you know, command was so incompetent and 3 guys got killed, or a friend of mine, you know, was hit by an IED. You know, that's not there as much. And I think that's good. You know, we're talking about war less because we're doing war less, and I always want to do less war. I want to do no war. I want no veterans whatsoever. So, you know, I guess like with Iraq and Afghanistan so wound down, there's just not new stories to tell anymore. And there's not people, there's just not as many people listening to that. And it is sad, you know, but it's also, I'm glad that I would prefer Afghanistan to be like a non-newsworthy thing because nothing's happening there, rather than, you know, we're trying to hide something or whatever.
Yeah. It's hard. And I think that's kind of in the week since I wrote the piece, I think that's what I'm slowly coming to grips with, because you know, like that chip on your shoulder, at first it kind of flares up and you're like, well, you know, why are they so happy? Like, why are these veterans so happy and so fresh? But like it takes a little bit of honesty and intellectual thought process. But then you realize, like you said, like this is a good thing, in that, yeah, like less war is better, right? Like you said, like that's so perfectly put. Like, you know, I'm glad that there are fewer Americans fighting and dying in Afghanistan. I don't know that there's fewer Afghans dying in Afghanistan. I think, you know, violence there continues in really disturbing and horrific ways. But overall, yeah, I think you see decreased violence levels, and that's a good thing. And so that's kind of the question, you know, like I don't know, is this a piece of history that we need to preserve? And I guess it's time to start looking back and thinking about lessons learned, and what do we do with this stuff now? Like, what do you and me and this generation of vets like us, now that we're not so angry and there's not a generation of angry folks following us, where do we go, and what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like, you know, when you talk about preservation, you know, everything, all my nearly 4 years of podcasting is preserved online. You know, all of our writings, everything that we had to write, like there's never going to be like a historian, if they have, you know, if in 100 years, if they still have like everything that was put online nowadays, there will always be, you know, one hell of a Rolodex to go through. Is like, how did veterans feel back then? It's like, well, let me fucking tell you, we've got 1 billion blog posts and a couple million tweets here for you to read if you want to know how all over the place people felt. So everybody, as always, you can follow me at ArmyStrang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast on Twitter at Hell of a Way, Instagram Hell of a Way to Die, and hellofawaytodie.com for your for writings, for merchandise, for all kinds of good stuff. And as always, there's the Patreon, and we have a lot of thanks for all of our Patreons. So I don't know, man. Everything's weird, but I believe in you. I believe in all of you. You make me proud.
Yeah,
that's all I got for him.
It sucks. Everything is bad, but also there are some bright spots in the distance somehow, and people making a difference in their communities. And I mean, the only way we get out of this is by people actually, by the people who would otherwise be apolitical, getting into it, and otherwise you get more fascists and corporate dumbasses. So, you know, that's the only way and that doesn't necessarily just mean electoralism, but it means organization. And, you know, I think there are some bright spots. There's some really, really dark spots too. We'll see what happens. And, yeah, like I said, I feel a lot of things as an American who is not in this country, or not in America right now. So we'll leave it there.
All right, sounds good. Everybody, we will talk to you next week, and good luck out there.